Okay, we're with Matthew McCullough, a speaker and consultant.
Yep.
Let's talk about Git.
All right. Git, my favorite topic of UberConf, really. Comes really close to ties with the others, but it does win out. It's one of those technologies that affects every type of developer, whether you're working on JRuby, whether you're working on Clojure, Objective-C, even for the iPhone project and workshop that we've been doing here. All of those are stored in Git repositories, Olabini stuff, and even Neil Ford. So it's kind of one of those technologies that reaches out to all the languages and all the platforms that we're working on today.
Right. So a lot of people are currently using Subversion as the version control system. They hear things about Git, but all their stuff is in Subversion.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a transition mechanism for if you wanted to try Git or just flat out just go for it?
Absolutely. There are actually several different facets where you can kind of do a progressive and easy transition between that. A couple of the ones that I'll highlight are, first and foremost, the round-trip capability to Subversion. Git is one of the very first version control systems that offers an integrated, not a plug-in, not an add-on, integrated round-trip back and forth to Subversion. You can do commits, even a small portion of the team can do commits in Git, and then have those replayed to the Subversion server. Maybe that's kind of the canonical source of reference. 80% of the team is still back on there, but they want to do a tiger team and explore if Git's going to be a good fit. You can do that with basically no consequences. And in fact, if it doesn't go well for you, which I'd be highly surprised because people are pretty addicted to it once they get using it, but if it doesn't go well for you, you have an exit strategy, because that is to simply just stop using Git and all of your commits are still back in Subversion. It's got that round trip capability. You're good to go. And it's really nice for a tool that doesn't require you to basically, sign a marriage certificate at the altar. You can basically just have an easygoing relationship with it.
So you can have that safety net if in that trial phase.
Absolutely. And in enterprises today, that's a huge thing. We're gung-ho for cutting-edge technologies. I know you're always kind of exploring the bounds. But we have to think about the fact that enterprises are a little bit more cautious, and having something that has an exit strategy to go back to the way that we were before actually increases adoption, because it means that it's a lower risk thing to try out and experiment with. So you actually find the adoption increases. They never go back. They love it. It's a great tool, but they're more willing to try it because of those options. The other kind of bridge technology for Subversion users is the fact that we have the ability to alias any of the commands in Git as a native feature. Not something you have to do at the operating system level, but the tool itself. And if you're coming from a particular platform, PVCS, CVS, Subversion, doesn't matter, you can rename the commands to respond to any alias that you'd like, and so that means you can kind of map the behavior to where you're coming from, and that actually results in kind of a progressive productivity benefit at the end, because you might map Git status or Git log or Git branch to your favorite other version control system's word, but in the end you end up just shortening those aliases shorter progressively, so that Git status for me is now Git S, Git log is Git L, Git branch, BR, etc., but you end up just compressing them farther down until you've got a single letter practically for your commands.
Right, so you can, in a way, customize the tool to kind of work with the way you want to think about the tool.
Absolutely, and in fact that's really the embodiment of the type of tool it is, and I'm starting to see more and more tools that embrace that flavor, which is composable and multiple levels at which you can access it. You can interact at the topmost level. It's kind of a friendly little interface, and it's got a small vocabulary of very powerful commands. And you're getting familiar with it. You're thinking you could do some interesting workflows if you took it down just a notch. Maybe manipulate some of the flows of bringing the data to and from the repository, maybe doing a little bit of surgery on some things that shouldn't have gotten into the repo. Go ahead and take those out. And last but not least, if you want really deep, tight integration, you can go all the way down to the point of, for example, the bash shell script that we looked at today in the Git workshop, which takes some of the very lowest level features and actually gives you integrated prompt in your bash that says what branch you're on with parentheses, does a little lightning bolt if you have local pending changes, does a yellow coded up arrow if you have ones that need to be pushed. So it gives you all these access points as your needs are allowed to kind of map onto this stratification of interacting with the tool. Very composable architecture.
Right. So another difference with Git versus, say, something like Subversion is the way that it works over the network.
Absolutely, and in fact, the answer to that is a humorous one at first. It doesn't, because
Right.
you can actually go through 70% of the class that we did this morning, and somebody's like, when do we have to connect it to the network? And I said, that's a dangerous word. Have to? Don't need to. You have a first-class repository on your box, and in fact, with no daemon running in the background. No server, no Apache, no authentication setup, no Git repository that you have to build with an admin tool in advance. You just find a directory, existing project, brand new, clean directory, get init, git add dot, git commit. You have a first-class repository that is now versioned with all the files that you put in there and all the changes that you'll make subsequently. Nothing running in the background, no overhead, no memory footprint for that, and only a couple of single-digit percentage overhead for the most part for the files that it actually tracks.
Right. But when we do want to share our work with others, which we do,
That's correct.
It has a good story there as well.
It does. In fact, it has the broadest support for protocols of any version control system in history. It can communicate over HTTP, HTTPS, FTP, rsync, SSH, its own Git protocol, and in fact a few extensions that are kind of on the fringe edges that we'll leave out of the talk for today, but wow, that's quite a handful already right there. You can choose any of those. Some have performance benefits over one another, but the flexibility there means that with HTTP support, firewalls are not a problem in most cases. If you want speed, you can use the Git protocol, and you can simultaneously host it on these protocols. It's not an either-or proposition. And when you do a pull or a push across the wire, which is kind of close to the equivalent of a commit that you might do in Subversion, it actually does a LZW compression or bzip compression on one of the ends of the wire, and so when that transmission is happening, you have a single data packet that represents all the changes, one socket open and one socket close, a transmission of all that contents across in a single stream of passing it, closing off the socket, decompressing on the remote end, so it works extremely well over modest to low bandwidth connections. You can theoretically do pretty good work over dial-up on this, and that is certainly not true with any of the other tools. And last but not least, since you have the full contents of the repository at your disposal, the whole repo is on your box, then you actually have the ability to manipulate, look through the log, history, blame, search, figure out what's been changed recently, where the branch is going, are we working on any of these story cards, and you can do that all on your local machine, disconnected, which in fact liberates you and disconnects you from having to be at the desktop like you did with the kind of enterprise version control system. So gives you some ability to work on the plane, work on the train, work on the bus, work in the backyard, work in the park, get kind of out of your comfort zone, so to speak, and maybe get your brain and energy thinking about things in a new way. So it kind of enables what you're actually authoring more than just the version control system, which seems like such a modest part of your day.
Mm-hmm. In addition to that, it uses an ad hoc networking model. There's no such thing as a Git server per se. It's just another Git instance being used as a server.
Exactly. So, you know, it's fun to joke around with some of these things for the people who are in the know. So, you got a Git server running on that box? No, but I have a Git client. Well, that'll do. We'll be fine with that. There is no such thing. It is just a Git client, no matter what. And you end up with a small Git server component if you'd like to serve out temporarily, as you said, ad hoc. You can just, on a small Wi-Fi hotspot, we could share code that way. But even cooler yet, you can put segments, time blocks of binary differences on a USB stick, not patch files. Binary differences of the repository, stick it over in your USB drive, catch up your repository up to date. That works great when you have some draconian enterprise where you have to VPN through 2 firewalls with a clicker and a token clicker and a password, and you're like, it's 2 files. Here, John, you've got it. Good, done. Just productivity to, you know, the maximum degree. It really liberates the ability to work with code to not be bound down by some of the networking constraints that the other version control systems are.
Very good. Well, thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and I would recommend that anybody who's interested in Git, check out Scott Chacon's free book, progit.org. Free resource, pretty cool. And second of all, a free dzone card, which is the Git ref card as well. So thanks.